So, week 3. That happened. My name's Zoe, my brain's a dragon, and we made it to the end of week 3, which I am not gonna lie, feels like a bit of an achievement today. So, did everything go entirely off the rails, or is it just what happens in week 3? Let's have a chat. Turns out, week 3 did exactly what I knew it was going to do, because I have some level of predictability in my brain schedule, and it was a little bit of a disaster. And by disaster, I just mean that my emotional state was all over the place, and everybody who had to deal with me kind of had to deal with me, so yeah. But the goals I set were pretty simple. They were to do morning sprints. They were to use the Catherine Devaney method of the half, get more comfortable every quarter. They were to do 4 days of writing at about 3,000 words, and to sort of get through it and just kind of have it work. And we largely did that. I did do a lot of sprints in the morning, and I did try and make sure that I didn't make all of the things that make me comfortable, including cups of tea and blankets and jumpers and that kind of thing, until I'd done at least one sprint. I found that that was useful in that it made sure I actually did the sprint and I didn't delay, but I also had to wait longer for tea, and that was probably not the smartest move I've ever made, and probably not something that I will do going forward. I may do it for things like putting on a jumper or putting on my lap blanket or having a snack maybe, but tea, I think, particularly in week 3, is pretty essential, and it's a safety mechanism at that point. So, gonna avoid that in future. I did also find that I was right. If I started sprints in particular writing groups that I'm part of, people jumped right in, which meant that I ended up with company for a lot of the week, and that made me feel really good. I also managed to get my 6 sprints a day on average done, but that actually meant that I was ending up doing about 4,000 words rather than the requisite 3, so I managed to get through this week with only needing 3 writing days, and I can tell you that is a huge relief because I had some symptom heavy days, and that made it really difficult to sort of stay in that uncomfortable place for writing. So how do we go in terms of word counts and scores? This week our writing turned into 3 days in a row because I was pushing myself to get it done because I could feel a flare coming, which, let's be honest, is never fun. Day 1 we managed to get 4,233 words. Day 2 was 4,025 words, and day 3 was 5,597 words. I got an ice cream, and that was great. The reason that it ended up being there is I had ended up way over word budget for the scenes that I needed to get in, and I didn't want to have to write any of the hard stuff in the beginning of week 4 because I knew that going into that with that hanging on my head was probably going to make me feel very much like not writing, and we are so close. We're into Act 3 now, and I just need to get it done. And I can, theoretically, and it's gonna be fine. I just need to kind of have a think about next week's plan and sort of process where I'm up to with this. So by the end of this week, we are actually up to 39,727 words. This means we are technically over budget for a 50,000 word novel. Now, I know that the word counts are very flexible and this is fine, but the thing to remember is that I actually usually write with an eye towards a 60 to 80,000 word novel, so it makes sense that some of the bigger set point scenes are going to be larger. I didn't, however, do any of the things that I could have done to make them smaller. I did not do scene sketches to try and layer things in. I did not do anything, in fact, that would have made it so that the scenes did more than one job. I guessed, hoped, and relied on my pantsing nature to be able to make that happen. And considering that I was a pantser before I decided that I needed to plan because the brain dragon had opinions, I have enough skill in that I can vaguely get through it. But what I also know is that it is absolutely imperative that when I go back and look at this a second time, I do things like put in conflict, because the Dark Night of the Soul was really more an uncomfortable afternoon of self-reflection. That's really not going to cut it when we're talking about crushing our characters' spirits. Didn't do it, just made them vaguely uncomfortable. Probably gonna have to leave that to editing me to fix because, poor editing me has a lot of work to do. But a good part of that is because I didn't have the space because I only had about 12,000 words to deal with, and that meant I couldn't cover it as efficiently as I wanted because I hadn't sort of set myself up to do it. And that's fine. I knew that was coming. This is always what happens in my early drafts, is the angst doesn't really get angsty. I mean, we did get the scene where Felicity had to unpick all of the sewing that she'd done, and we did get the scene where Lawrence had to have a conversation with Winifred that went terribly. It started off okay, and then she ended up yelling at him, and then his best friend ended up telling him he was an idiot, and then he's very confused at this point and feels like he may have done something very poorly, but he's not exactly sure how to fix it, and he just knows that maybe going to town is the best answer. this is fine. We're going to get into the Act 3 stuff, and they're going to figure out that they can actually make this work and that they have the option of actually picking love rather than not, and hopefully that will work itself out. I do have enough scenes in there, given the size of the scenes as they ended up from the scene I outline to this week, so I should be relatively okay with figuring that out. Fingers crossed. But the good news is week 3 is done. The bad news is I may be a giant ball of nope for at least the next day or so. Usually what I would do is I would just throw myself into week 4 and kind of push myself into Act 3 and make it happy and feel better. But if I did that, I am at very real risk of making myself overtired, and considering that I have been wearing my corset for a couple of days now, probably not a good sign, and I should probably back off and let myself have some rest so that I don't end up needing to take 3 weeks off because I literally can't function without some kind of external upright assistance. You know, corset, walking stick, walls in convenient places, a person to hang on to, you know, that kind of thing. Given that I don't want to do that, and I want to be able to make sure that writing is a consistent part of my life going forward rather than something that I do in really big explosive bursts and then kind of collapse in a screaming heap over, this is going to be the hardest not writing week for me at this point because I just want to keep going. And I can't, because if I do, then December turns into an absolute nightmare and I can just see it coming. So I'm going to drink some tea, plan some stuff. If I end up doing any additional creative work, it'll probably just be reading over stuff, adding to the World Bible, that kind of thing. But I may actually distract myself on purpose so I don't do any of that. It might end up being a manga heavy, J-dramas, all kinds of things, so I don't. This week for rewards, I decided that I was just going to lean into what I wanted rather than relying on the reward box to give me ideas. It's one of the reasons that I'm going to be reading a lot of manga and watching a lot of silly dramas that make me happy, and why I ended up going to Officeworks for post-it notes and came home with a lot of things that were not post-it notes. It was on sale and it's aggressively shiny. So I have a black one that normally sits on my desk because I was trying to teach myself how to use a planner. But then I saw this, and they also had these and matching stickers. And I suddenly realized that one of the reasons I'm having trouble with my black one that sits on my desk is because it's got too much stuff in it. It's got my general life, writing stuff, all my reading lists, sewing things, recipes that I like. It is just too much. There is only so much room in a ring binder. So this is my super shiny, what am I calling this? It's my hoard, isn't it? Other stuff hoard. Realistically, it's probably going to be where I keep all my story ideas, anything that I want to make sure I do a video on so I don't forget it, because let's be honest, I will forget things. It's going to have probably my reading lists. I don't know. It's just, I'm so excited because it's different and I will know exactly what it's for, and it'll hopefully make it easier to use my other planner as well, because it will contain some stuff in it that doesn't need to live in the other planner. Everything having a home and every home for the object having room for it is actually really important. That's my reward for this week, and of course using my teapot with one of my favorite teas. I'm gonna go drink more tea, organize my new and shiny story and adventure planner, and I will see you next time. Bye, lovely.